Research shows that the gut microbiome affects a lot of how we experience our daily lives. Emotions, weight, brain functioning, even our food choices. But how does it work? The gut microbiome is a collection of trillions of microbes, or microscopic organisms. These microbes, like bacteria and fungi, live in your digestive tract, mostly in your large intestine. Digestion is just your body taking raw materials, food, and turning it into something it can use.
Nice crust.
Digestion makes glucose, which runs your brain and muscles. It also enables your body's messengers, like hormones and neurotransmitters. Your digestive system is a factory for turning food into fuel, and your microbes are its workers. And what you get out of it depends a lot on the quality of what you put into it. Gut microbes have their own genes, which affect the way your human genes act. There are about 20 to 25,000 different human genes that make up your body. Sounds like a lot. But there are millions of different microbe genes inside of you that influence how your human genes act. In some studies, the microbiomes of healthy mice were transplanted into stressed mice. The stressed mice then showed fewer anxiety symptoms. Fruit flies with particular bacterial species in their microbiomes ate more protein. When researchers changed the flies' microbiomes, the flies ate more sugar. In one study, researchers found that many elite athletes have a group of bacteria that helps break down lactate and could help performance and recovery. When these bacteria were transplanted into mice, the mice's treadmill performance increased. And this is all great news, because you can't change your genes, but you can change your microbiome for the better. And one of the quickest ways to do that is through food. There are immeasurable other factors that influence your gut microbiome: where you live, sleep, exercise, stress. But what your body makes and what kind of microbes your gut has depend a lot on the food you eat. You can change your microbiome and potentially your daily experiences and long-term health through food. Recent technology makes it possible to test your gut microbiome at home to get a peek at what's living inside you. But is gut microbiome testing worth it? In the next episode.
Namaste, Adab, Sasriyakal. Hello and welcome to Yellow Squash Health Talks, where we talk about interesting things happening in the health. And this is going to be your host and host, Coach AJ, who will be conducting this talk with one interesting personality along with us. So today we have a very, very interesting topic by the name Gut Microbiome, unveiling the secrets of the gut, and with none other than an interesting personality himself, Mr. Bipin Pradeep Kumar. He himself has been into smart cities. He's been making cities smart, but right now he's making the microbiome smarter. So, without any further ado, I would like to give a warm welcome to our guest of the day, Mr. Bipin Pradeep Kumar. Very, very good evening, Bipin. How are you doing today?
Very good, Amarjeet. Thank you for having me, and I like your enthusiasm. So, looking forward to the show. I mean, thank you and Yellow Squash actually for having us. I will talk about what we do. I was
True,
looking to
absolutely fascinating to know your journey. Your journey has been very inspirational, Bipin. And right from creating smarter cities to making smarter biomes, microbiomes. I mean, how did you get from the city into the gut? Can you give what fascinated you? Where did that passion come in from?
well, a lot of credit goes to the teams in both the locations, in both the institutions. So, say a lot of credit goes to the teams, the collaborators, the partners for all of that. But personally, I mean, I've always been a technologist, and in fact, our approach to solving some of these areas is by looking at it in a very scientific, deep technological fashion. I mean, you heard these buzzwords, deep tech and deep science, but we actually do that. I would say we are a research first, science first consumer healthcare company. My personal journey, I mean, when I left the earlier organization, I was pretty much wondering what to do, but I've had several health issues in my late 30s because well, I didn't know it at that time, but when I had these health issues, gut issues really, I couldn't digest certain foods, and it became a kind of a big strain on my quality of life really. And when I went about asking doctors what it was, none of them could really find out what was the cause. I did all kinds of tests. I was in different cities at that time. Did all kinds of tests, nothing conclusive because there was nothing that they could find out. And it was only when I started understanding about or reading up, and this is about 5 years ago, 4 5 years ago, is when the bacteria. I mean, on one hand, the bacteria was causing bacteria viruses are causing things like COVID. On the other hand, there's information about how important the bacteria was to life itself, not just just you, but to the very nature of life.
So, what was happening precisely with you? I would like to know what were the symptoms that you were facing. You were having a good, bustling life, and then what exactly happened that time? What were the issues that you were facing?
I see a message saying voice is not clear, so maybe I'll come closer. One of the issues I was facing, severe stomach pain. If I ate certain foods, I would get a fever. I mean, I would get a headache, and I would get a headache, and in fact, sometimes I still do headache and fever. I think it's a combination of I don't know whether it was constipation or diarrhea. I don't think I had either, but severe, and most of the foods wouldn't agree. What had happened to me was I took a lot of antibiotics when I was young. I was born with a congenital health issue, and from the age of 6, when it was identified, to the age of about 29, I took a heavy dose of penicillin, almost 12 lakh units of penicillin every 3 weeks. I took that for 22 years. And I think that pretty much wiped out the entire ecosystem, the conducive ecosystem and the bad ecosystem. I think they were trying to take away the bad, whatever was bad, viruses, bacteria, whatever. But it also took away the good. And when I realized that possibly this was the case, and eventually when I came in, exited my early organization and was talking around to my current partners who have been studying this domain of computational biology for, for well over 2 decades, is when they said, "Why don't you come and look at it from our lens?" And when I started looking at it and looking at specific bacteria, and then we sequenced, the team from I sequenced mine. And then you could clearly see that I lacked specific bacteria. And no matter, there are probiotics and all that, even if you put it in, it doesn't, it form. It's just gone.
So what happened that time? And what were your colleagues doing that time, that they actually pinpointed that? And what prompted you to actually thinking that, okay, let me try this out? You had already tried a couple of things, and then what actually made you think that let's go that path?
So, like I said, we are a deep tech company. Research
Yeah.
science first, and now we're trying to adapt it to consumer needs. The colleagues were working in a domain called computational biology or systems biology, where you were making replicas of biological systems in computers, in silicon, and seeing how that can help answer certain questions, how that can simulate or mimic certain ecosystems. So you don't need to try it out in real life. You don't need a mouse, so you don't need to try out this combination versus that. You could try out in silico and see what the probabilities are of these changes or formulations or whatever. But more essentially, it was in some sense a convergence of technology, because there was genetic sequencing that was coming in a major way in the last 2 decades. But genetic sequencing was also becoming increasingly less expensive. It is still, I wouldn't say it is accessible to almost everybody. It is more than ever, it has ever been that it is accessible. So that technology is becoming available. So you could collect your biological sample and run a DNA sequence over it. When you ran a DNA sequence over it, you could see which bacterial DNA was there and what bacterial DNA and how much of it. That means composition and abundance, and therefore you know which bacteria is there in what proportion, and you would then estimate it back on to say what is the purpose of this bacteria, what does the bacteria do. If you were to look at, from the video that you just played, there are certain bacteria that influence moods and behaviors by producing neurotransmitters, biochemicals, GABA, etc., which affect moods. So that became more and more mainstream. The research into that went more deep, I would say, and now it's globally quite accessible. Companies like us are doing great jobs at not just finding but also providing solutions. It's not just the analysis, but what we do is something called optimization, and we'll talk about it. But yes, that is my story, and that's how we are where we are.
So just going ahead a little bit on your story itself, um, after you were facing all of that, so did you go in for any testing? Did you try some kind of stuff? What did you exactly go for?
Oh, I did all kinds of conventional testing at that time, which is your
Okay.
endoscopy and colonoscopy and blood tests, numerous blood tests, numerous scans. Because it was debilitating in some sense. It was also, when you don't find answers to things, you keep looking.
True,
So
true.
then it was then that this mechanism, and there also initially in our early days, we had to find organizations that did this, and there's some very few national level bodies that had some of these equipment. Um, so incidentally, my colleagues are Japanese, and we couldn't send biological samples there. We had to. The technology was there, but we had to import, or rather, we had to adapt and adopt for the conditions here. And yeah, that's pretty much.
Thank you so much for bringing the technology to India.
But
So what
in,
was? Yep.
I know you thank, but this was coming in anyway. And this is the beauty of technology. It's a leveler. As long as you have the interest, technology is easy. It's the application of technology, in my view, that is a little more difficult and
So
requires a
what
lot
were
more
the
effort.
what were the findings like? What did you discover? Like, was there like the gut microbiome is normally described as a forest with a lot of different varieties of bacteria. So what did you discover about yourself, and what happened after that?
I don't specifically recall which all bacteria were there and not there, but I do know I didn't have a species of bacteria called Prevotella. I also didn't have something called Lactobacillus. I think it was almost negligible. And no matter what we tried, that wasn't sitting plus proliferating. It wasn't growing. So you have to find alternatives, and alternatives in the form of prebiotics, really, which help foster the growth of certain bacteria rather than introducing live bacteria, because live bacteria in many cases are treated as external organizations, and your body, which is already flushed with antibiotics, pretty much kill it.
Yep.
Anyway, so that's what we did. I mean, that's what I remember. Certain strains, certain species, certain genera, really, weren't really there.
So, what is the? Did you try probiotics? Any probiotics?
I definitely did. And probiotics are pretty much like drugs. They work for the immediate term. They don't stick around. They don't provide you the long term benefit. If you need, I guess, a longer term, then your body has to come back. Your body has to build that ability itself. I don't know whether probiotics. That's one piece, but the other piece is that you don't have too many strains of bacteria that are approved to be taken as probiotics. We have roughly between 2,000 to 3,000 strains of bacteria in your gut. I think the government of India has not approved more than about 35 strains to be consumed as probiotics. So there's a huge gap there.
So you said around 3,500 strains is what you have found, or 35,000? Have I correctly heard it?
About 3,000, between 2,000 to 3,000 strains of bacteria live in your gut.
Yeah, and we are only having around 35 so-called
Probiotic
strains of
strains.
probiotics.
That's correct.
Okay, so we don't cover all the different kinds of different personalities of bacteria. So every bacteria has a personality. It has a personality. It has a function. It has a role to play. Is that how it is? There's a world inside of us.
I would think there are many words inside of us, really, if you were to look at it, because it's trillions of organisms. And these, while there are a lot of answers, like I think in most cases with science, there are a lot of things we don't know yet too, and we're consistently finding, improving. And that's the beauty of science. While you know there are certain things and you can help with it, there's a lot more to be discovered. So I would think there are many worlds within us. There's also an Ayurvedic, I think, a statement by one of those old Ayurveda gurus. It says that man is many cosmos inside. Man has many cosmos inside. Something to that effect. I think maybe I should come closer.
So, I happened to go through one of your interesting reports, Gut Sense, wherein you talk about the stress, the energy, the sleep, everything can be tested that is directly related to the different kinds of strains, the variety of strains that are in your gut. So, how does that entire thing work? And like the Olympics is going on right now, and there can be a change. They definitely need to have good sleep. They need to have good energy levels. Their stress level is extremely high,
Exactly.
and that needs to be combated. So, how do we foresee things in the future if, in case, we get to know that what kind of bacteria can make a difference to me and what can happen?
Yeah, I've been reading up on this Vinesh Phogat case, right? And I'm sure that it just shocked and rocked the nation. And among the things that were said were how she didn't sleep all night, and how she didn't drink water and dehydrated herself. And um, while conventional means may say some of these may reduce weight, in some cases, what you've seen is abstaining from sleep and dehydrating yourself increases, water retention and increases body weight as well. It all depends on it's person dependent, really, um, and that's what bacteria tell us, that depending on what you have and what somebody else has, it's very different for each one of us. I mean, as you heard from the video that you had earlier, while we have 23,000, about 25,000 human genes, we have many more million bacterial genes. And these play a significant role. These play a huge role in regulating so many of our body conditions. These things are just getting discovered. So, what we know also is that while genetically you and I are almost 99.9% similar, microbiometry. I mean, with all those, we are almost, if the word called microbiometry, but we are almost 80% different from each other. Your family, I mean, anybody in your house, your friend, mother, father, spouse, all of us are incredibly different. And by being cognizant of this difference and adapting yourself to what is best for you, I think that's what can deliver the best for us.
Okay. All right. So there comes the microbiome testing. So I'm getting a lot of questions as well. People are pretty curious to know. Some of them have been asking about probiotics at this point. But since we just spoke about it, um, how does microbiome testing now change the way we solve things in the gut?
Very simple. You're unique. I mean, if I tell, I mean, I ask you a question there, probiotics for leaky gut. It could be very loose if I say that, or it could be very loose uh, if you think that the same probiotic will help every one of us. Pretty much like medicine. Sometimes it works for us, sometimes it doesn't, really affect us, and it affects us in very different ways. So what analyzing a microbiome does is tell you very specifically, and it's very personalized and it's very precise. Tell you that perhaps this bacteria, this probiotic, may really not work for you at all. I mean, we have seen instances where somebody has been taking lactobacillus for a long time, and that itself is a cause for dysbiosis because the gut has got sometimes so much of lactobacillus. Right, I mean, see, we're an ecosystem, right? I mean, you have 100%. Uh, there's only so much that can live, and if you only empower one, that becomes like the rogue or the what is the
There's a
and
domination kind of thing happening. Even
yeah,
the good domination is bad.
that's correct because you need a variety. So if you keep taking one bacteria, I mean, one probiotic, it's not helpful either. And that just that information has helped that person get better, saying that maybe you should stop taking this probiotic. It's about time. Um,
So too much of a good thing can be bad. That's pretty much
I mean,
applicable here.
yeah,
And most of the time we think that probiotics is going to be good for me, I better take it, and you end up actually putting too much of a good thing in your body, which starts becoming a bad thing.
I,
That's
I like rasgulla and what is that, gulab jamun, but beyond five, or you don't feel like I mean, too much of good is not good either.
that's where a microbiome test, a comprehensive test, helps you find out which all strains are there and how to optimize the entire thing. So definitely people have heard about a couple of tests like GI mapping, and other comprehensive stool tests. Now how is it different from that, and how is the Indian population different from that international tests?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't firstly compare between GI. It's particularly done by one company, but from a very specific point of view, some of these test tube cultures where they look for specific pathogens, perhaps. Like I have H. pylori, and then a test is done to check whether you have H. pylori. Um, and so some of these common pathogens are studied in the definite detail to show whether it is there or not. What the DNA sequencing of the microbiome does is get you the entire plethora of bacteria that is there in your gut. So one is, it's like studying for, it's like culturing and seeing if, does Amarjeet have this, does Amarjeet have this, does Amarjeet have this. These are the common ones that are known to cause stomach or digestive issues. So you culture against them and check, and there, of course, there are other methodologies, assays, and all that. But I think the most comprehensive one to give you the entire set of bacteria, or virus, fungi, everything that's there in your gut is pretty much whole meta genome sequencing. So that's the first bit. The second one, where you asked about the Indian population and the gut of the Indian populace, that is something some of us Indian companies are studying. I wouldn't say we have all the combinations worked out. In fact, that's a work in progress. We've closed one clinical trial on aging. We are starting another one on IBS. The objective of these studies are to find that out in greater detail. How different is it from some of the studies that have been published in the West? And I mean, to this, I must also say that data there's a huge data anomaly. Data of I mean, microbiome data is hugely available in the West. When I say West, it actually includes China also, so I can't just say the West. China, US, and Europe contribute to more than 71% of the global microbiome data. India typically, as we know from some of the things that we have done last, my team has done last, doesn't contribute to more than 1% of microbiome data. So companies like us, companies like yours, Yellow Squash, and even folks should support this whole endeavor of getting microbiome data from India and seeing how it can actually help. Because it's personal. I mean, and even in conventional medicine, from breast cancer, there's a whole lot of ethnic variations in breast cancer, and that is why it's also seen that there's a lot of success for some ethnicities versus some others. At a microbiome level, I guess it's even more important to study these variations to come out. But what we have done, and we've taken, in fact, it's a patent that we applied for very differently, is what we call optimization, where we study the role of the metabolites that certain bacteria produce and the ecosystems of that bacteria require, and these variations in these ecosystems, or the combinations of ecosystems, and then say that this is how we need to modify Amarjeet's gut by, and this is what we need to modulate Amarjeet's gut too. So data anomaly that needs to be solved for sure, but data anomalies have also resulted in innovation in the way things are addressed. Yeah. So good, bad, you go along with it.
So, what I understand from what you have explained is, so this is me, this is A, and I want to probably increase my energies, or I have a particular issue. Maybe I have, because sometimes we also have heard about the gut brain axis, which tells you that. Even communication, social skills, etc., also depend on not only the way we feel, food mood connection, but there is also other connections as well. So if I want to improve a particular thing, an aspect about myself, whether that's energy or anything, you would rather be recommending me prebiotics, which will improve the bacteria, that will improve that thing, that energy level about me. Is that how it is?
Yes. To answer your question in a simple nutshell, yes, but it's a little more nuanced than that. Prebiotics are pretty much stuff that you have to eat, which is available in your kitchen, like garlic. I commonly like ajwain and jeera and salt and ginger. These are pretty much what I call FOS and GAUs, so oligosaccharides to some extent, different kinds of oligosaccharides. These are prebiotics. These suggest prebiotics and food that is relevant to you, which means that, like I mentioned earlier, it may be right for you, but the same thing may not be right for somebody else. But that level of personalization, that level of precision, helps you overcome and achieve the objective and the impact that you want. So that's what we are after, figuring out how we can help you do that.
So after your story, what did you discover? What kind of prebiotic was something that you needed to introduce in your life so that you could have a balanced microbiome?
So I actually took a lot of ajwain, and I used to take a lot of ginger, thinking that ginger will help calm my stomach. It was completely opposite. For me, I was told not to have ginger, and actually that helped. So while my mother kept saying, have ginger when you have stomach upset, have ginger when you have stomach upset, for me, taking ginger away actually helped. For me, introducing lime actually helped. What else? These were noticeable changes. Yeah, for some others, I mean, for people we have seen as diverse as saying that don't have rice, whereas most people say have rice, have rice, it calms down. Some people say don't have millets. Typically you say go after the whole natural thing because your body sometimes can't doesn't have the ability to ferment that, digest that. So yes, so for me it was like I said, it was highly personal. And if I tell somebody else don't have ginger, it may not be the most viable thing at all. So sometimes it defeats conventional thinking, it beats conventional thinking when you look at that level of impact that you require from a position personalization point of view.
So it becomes a lifelong adaptation that you do.
So
Uh,
I'm glad you brought that up. It's certainly not because I mean, we change, right? And so do our ecosystems. They change. So
okay.
in 6 months down the line, a year down the line, perhaps I can. And in fact, that is how it has gotten better by taking the prebiotics. Some things that I couldn't take have gotten better. Previously, I couldn't eat anything to do with wheat at all. I mean, I used to get a stomach upset. I used to get a headache, and I used to get a fever.
With
Now,
rice. With
now
rice.
no, with chapati, with wheat.
With wheat, you would have headaches. Okay.
Now, I mean, I can tolerate a little bit. I can tolerate a little bit. Perhaps down the line, some of these things will be completely cured.
Okay. So how much time did it take? Because you were facing your symptoms for some years, if I'm not wrong. And how much time did it take for you to recover once you discovered the story of your microbiome?
So in mine, I didn't specifically measure this, because these were early days, and I was just looking at. I mean, I wasn't even trying to see whether I could eat or anything.
True.
I was just trying to get better, and I didn't consume or anything for a long time. I didn't, and because it was issues that I had when I consumed certain things, when I didn't consume it, didn't really matter. But what we have seen in people, and you spoke about the gut-brain axis and people recovering from anxiety and stress and issues like that. And in fact, now it's called the gut-brain microbiota axis. We have added the microbiota to it. We've seen improvement in symptoms in as early as 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. After an introduction of prebiotics in their diet,
And,
the recommended ones.
and the changes in the diet and the changes in the diet. We've seen. So we have the team. I mean, our nutritionist and the doctor specifies a regimen too, so that they monitor the whole regimen. So in their monitoring process, there's a review that happens, and the review may suggest changes. So maybe you could have a change in your dietary recommendation or prebiotic intake in as early as 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks. But that's something that the, the right person will look at and tell you.
Great. In fact, you know that what is the food, or I would say, what is the prebiotic for any particular bacteria. And then when you introduce it, that bacteria proliferates. I could also see an important thing in the report was that you also give a recommendation for how to optimize it,
That's
how
correct.
to optimize your microbiome, how to make it better than what it is. And there are some recommendations in which a reduction of some of them is required and an increase in some of them is required, whereas a balance has to be maintained for some of them. So, is that a recommendation for a couple of months, or how
So
long is it for?
uh, that report that we give you is for the first 3 months, realistically. Is what it's valid for. But even within that, when the doctor or the nutritionist or the gut specialist, let me put it that way, reviews it and sees symptomatic changes or other changes that indicate that things have gone bad or good, there are changes suggested right away. So you could have changes within what he prescribed. So coming to the optimization piece, so this optimization, like I mentioned earlier, is where we see that Amarjeet has bacteria X in 10% and and bacteria Y in maybe 20%, but Amarjeet's mother may have bacteria X in 25% and 30%, and maybe there's another set of ecosystems that down the line.
Hmm.
I think I gave you this example, and this is something my team says I should change. But the ecosystem in your gut is like your dogs and cats and everything else. If you increase the number of dogs, obviously you all know the cats will go down. But typically the ecosystem is such that if you reduce the number of cats, then sometimes snakes and frogs and everything else will come up too. So finding this balance, which is very different if you have to look at the area which is there in your gut and how you are as a person and other impacts. Maybe you have different um, um, amounts of vitamin D, and there are and now we know a lot of vitamin D, vitamin D3, etc., are produced by a bacterial value chain. Different pathways that bacteria actually originates in bacteria. So you wouldn't really mess with that in many ways. For you, it would be modulated very differently. So that's what the optimization does. The optimization doesn't say, for this is Amarjeet's gut, that is what it is, and it's not a top level map. It's a map that you can action on. To simplify it, it's a map that gives you a direction. That's the optimization piece on one hand. That's what we do. And that's the innovation that has happened. The other is what you asked about food. When we recommend food, we don't recommend food just because we think it's the right food or because we think it is right. We look at the biochemistry of food. We look at we model what is called metabolic fluxes. I mean, that may all sound overtly grand, but simply put, different foods have different phytonutrients within them. Carrot has beta carotene, and maybe another 30, 40 different phytonutrients. Um, Ajwain that we spoke of has a phytonutrient called thymol. These are food for certain bacteria. So when we tell you, Amarjeet, you need to have carrot versus your mother needs to have beans, it is because the system has computed and matched to a high degree of probability that Amarjeet's stomach needs the phytonutrients that are available in this food ingredient versus Amarjeet's mother requiring these. So it's not whimsical. It is not based on conventional knowledge. It is based on strict computation of the phytonutrients to the bacteria that are required to be increased or decreased.
So I like that idea of, a carrot can be dangerous for one person and it cannot be dangerous for the other. It could be like जैसे बोलते हैं अमृत है carrot आपके लिए और किसी के लिए विष हो सकता है. So that's what your test can discover. But there's one question that was coming in my mind, that for a healthy person and for an unhealthy person. So unhealthy would be anyone who has got probably gut issues or any other issue where they feel that the gut brain axis is involved. So what are the recommendations that way? So what tests, what all conditions need those tests?
That's an interesting. I mean, a lot of what we've been suggesting is if you want to really stay well and prevent certain things, and that's the right thing to do, is when you should look after your. So it is when you need to look after your health. You don't look after your health after you fall sick. I mean, and that's the difference. What one of my colleagues like to call healthcare versus sick care. You need to be in the healthcare space, not in the sick care space. So ideally, I would suggest people, above a certain age, figure out um, and do this rather than waiting to have certain health issues and then using it to prevent it. So we closed a study on healthy aging, and one of the things that we know is that if you take corrective measures, again, this is secondary knowledge, it's not direct. Secondary knowledge, this is secondary knowledge, is that if you take corrective measures, um, between maybe even as early as your 40s, your your health span kind of improves. So prevention, in many ways, seems to be the better way to do things than to wait to fall sick and then correct it. Having said that, yes, there are conditions like IBS that we have gone deep in, and we've seen. We built a classifier again. We built a classifier to say that if you have certain microbial patterns uh, and a particular microbial ecosystem or ecosystems, then the probability that you have IBS or a particular kind of IBS is higher than others. And even in anxiety, I mean, in fact, our first product is about sleep, energy, and stress. If you have to look at the um, biochemicals, the metabolites, the neurotransmitters, GABA, I mentioned, several others, which actually even influenced what you spoke about, the blood-brain barrier, so to say, have its origins in certain bacteria.
So
In
with that, we have a very special section in which, like, I would talk about people with child developmental disorders, to be precise, with like autism or ADHD. Most of the time, things are inseminated from the gut itself. So, what is your take on that?
We ourselves don't treat children below the age of 18. I think 18 is one. I mean, that's a philosophical principle approach that you've taken, partly stemming from the belief that if you tell children, who are well, of course, I'm not going specifically to the ones that are diseased, that you should have certain food or not have certain food, then you take away the, the, the diversity, the variety that children need to have. And in early ages, as much as in other times, you need a variety. So we stayed away from it from a principal point of view. But at the same time, you brought up, and I see a question there about autism. We've seen children, I wouldn't say cure autism, but some of their extreme issues in obsessive behavior, etc., kind of getting better when it's handled with more precise food. That is at one level. We have also seen cases, or else we have heard of instances where there are folks that do, and I think this is an extreme, do fecal microbiota transplant, uh, changing or transplanting fecal matter from people or kids without autism and a space specific, and I'm hoping specific traits will be do some of that as well, to people with autism, and them getting better. Now, this is all anecdotal. I don't have specific information myself. Uh, there are uh, there are studies to show that why this could be successful. There are pathways to show that why this could actually benefit. I think it's still too early before we say that this is a cure for autism, this is a cure for ADHD, this is a cure for specific child development disorders. There's some more research to be done, I would say, before it's seen as safe and a viable means to as a viable means as an intervention. But early successes are there, um, not as a cure, but in treating the obsessive behaviors. And I think that is better explained in my view than saying it can be treated, it can use as a mechanism to treat autism.
So I would like to take the question and answers. We've got a couple of questions, and uh, Satkrut Anand, I am just going to display the question. It says, I've heard that the microbiome bacteria in small intestine is different from the colon microbiome, what we get by testing the stool sample. If so, how can we predict which strain will be helpful for the kid?
So I'll take the first part of the question. The microbiome bacteria falls into the colon microbiome. Uh, and that is absolutely true. In fact, the microbiome across your lining, across the small intestine and colon, is considerably different. What technology allows us to do is to make estimations, based on what you believe would be the route and how long and whatever is taken to then say that this is the amount of bacteria in your gut. This is the amount of bacteria, and this bacteria came from the colon. This bacteria came from some other area of the whole value, the whole system. So these are all estimations. These are all based on knowledge that is there. But I mean, I don't know about the kid, and I don't know about. But again, when you realize that certain bacteria produce certain biochemicals, then you take it on that. If I need to help the mood of the child, so to say, then probably I would work around with which bacteria can help that. We spoke of dopamine. We spoke of serotonin. Serotonin comes from the whole tryptophan 5-HT, that pathway. you would modulate that. Um, you would mediate using intervention that can impact that set of bacteria. So it is more about addressing the metabolites than about knowing specifically that it came from this area or it came from this. Is what I would say.
So, gut microbiome testing helps in that case.
Oh, certainly does. It certainly does. And see, like all of this, these are early days. Also, in some sense, you need to realize there's a lot. We have had a lot of success. Many other folks have had a lot of success in diverse areas. But a lot of these things are multifactorial in nature, and yeah, we should go with it. Microbiome testing, microbiome analysis and optimization is one level above, I would say, than just testing and knowing. How do we optimize it is an important piece. How do we optimize it with the right ingredient, food, metabolite, drug? I mean, drugs probably an extreme. We don't do drugs. We just work with with multibiotics, so to say. All that is a good way to, because these are all natural, right? I mean, unlike drugs, which possibly have side effects, synthetic, etc. Sometimes it's not to say that food doesn't have side effects. Probably less. I mean, there's the thing. I don't think it's bad. So to say. It's probably a good way to try.
So, Arun Kataria asks that please tell something about probiotics for leaky gut, and is there any brand you recommend?
Oh, I wouldn't know about the brand per se, and for leaky gut, uh, well, mm, what are the probiotics? The specific bacteria. I don't know if those bacterial strains are available as probiotics. There are specific prebiotics too. Uh, no, I wouldn't be able to recommend a brand, so to say, and I would hesitate to recommend anything in this. Ideally, I would say, check yourself, because it may not be the right thing to just take any generic piece. Check
Getting a
yourself.
gut microbiome test gives you that idea. Is that what you're saying?
That's
It
correct.
would give you an idea about what all strains are probably missing, and whether that strain is available in a probiotic form is something which is something that you're not clear about. Is there any brand which is providing that particular probiotic? If
That's correct.
that's what we are talking.
Exactly. I mean, I, you might as well be more precise to yourself, right? I mean, instead of taking something, I mean, you wouldn't do exercises that doesn't suit you, that don't suit you. You wouldn't take something that is not. Why would you just take something generic? I mean, your option is available.
Okay. So, a couple of people had been asking, do you have capsules or medication to replenish the gut microbiome?
That's the easiest thing to do, right? I mean, that's what most people seem to want. If we say just eat the right food, nobody's happy with it. Everybody wants capsules. Uh, Everybody wants instant. Well, we are working on capsulizing certain. I wouldn't say capsulizing, but maybe sachetizing certain prebiotics, so to say. But whatever it is, I would highly recommend that you at least figure out what might be relevant for you. Read up if you don't want to really do the test about your condition and your symptom. Be more informed and then do something that is right for you, rather than saying that I just need to take this probiotic because that's what it says is what it is. Understand it to a greater degree of accuracy, of probability at least, and then take it forward. Yeah, I think we need to move away from being generic about some of these things.
And with that, there is Satkut who's asking whether it's good to use probiotics for autism spectrum kids.
I wouldn't say the answer is a no. It may certainly not be the case. Has the kid had too much of spore related probiotics? That's a question to ask. Is there something else that the kid could possibly take? I would think that's a high probability. So there's no one generic thing I would say, and for something as deeply impactful as autism and anything else, right? You would rather be more precise about it than take something. Again, going back to what we spoke of in terms of extreme things like autism, etc. We know it helps in maybe in regulating the mood certain times. We know it helps in calming because of the way the gut brain axis, the gut brain microbiota axis work. Maybe repeated reviews and changes in a monitored environment will help it get better over the longer period of time. But just saying, just take this one for the next whatever, I think it's impractical. It's not prudent. But that's what science tells us.
In fact, Sabah was asking us how long does one have to take probiotics?
That's exactly what I've been saying. Uh, I, I would say maybe take it. I mean, if you're taking something generic, take it till you feel better, and maybe you shouldn't keep taking it lifelong or for 3 years or 1 year or whatever, because that itself may cause another dysbiosis. I mean, I think Buddha was very right when he said take the middle path. Don't do extremes.
I think time again we have been saying the same thing again and again. Too much of a good thing can be bad. Too much of a bad thing is already bad. So I believe the audience has also started getting that thing that there's no particular recommendation unless or until it's unique to you. Now Neelam is asking a very interesting question, and of course we all know yogurt, curd, dahi, etc. Pretty much the probiotic thing that everyone keeps talking about. So is giving yogurt helps to fulfill probiotic bacteria related things.
If I talk about this to my team will say, firstly, there's a difference between curd and yogurt. Yeah.
Yes.
So there itself be cautious about it. There is a difference between curd made from home versus curd that is bought outside. That's another piece. But typically, curd is seen to be better than yogurt unless it is infused. Yogurt is infused with specific bacterial strains that have been mentioned. Probiotic curd or yogurt is now becoming a fad. It could help. It could help. Um, but to some people, it might just you know add to gastric issues as well.
So, with that, I'll just come to the next question. In which conditions gut microbiome tests are necessary for the right treatment?
Definitely, if you have digestive issues, I would say. But we are also seeing this. We've been working with people who are recovering from things as bad as certain cancers, chemo, and others, where the gut is pretty much destroyed because of the chemo itself. I mean, like antibiotics, it doesn't know the difference between good and bad. It kind of takes away. It's not narrow strain. It's not specific. They're working on narrow strain antibiotics. It's not that. It's very generic. So it could just be that everything can go and we can treat it better by understanding what works for you. We can make recuperation and rejuvenation and recovery better. So it needn't be even saying that digestive health issues. It can be as diverse as saying I want to get better at um, at recovering from certain things. It can be, as we spoke of, the whole anxiety, sleep, and stress. It could be where, in fact, somebody was asking about C-section and motherhood. I'm going to get a child. What are the better bacteria, good bacteria to give my child? Perhaps I know I'm going to have a C-section, and maybe certain bacteria will not go to the child. Maybe you should just figure out what's right for you and consume the right things. And the good thing is it's not medicinal, right? There's no medicine; it's all natural ingredients. Um, so Yeah, to solve this question. So there are ways, diverse ways in which we believe that bacteria help, and all this we're still talking about gut, right? I mean, we've also seen the oral microbiome. There's a skin microbiome, and we've seen the connection between the gut and the skin. We have seen the issues as non-related as eczema and psoriasis getting addressed by addressing your gut, and in fact, it can even be addressing the moods and behaviors in your gut. But sometimes eczema and psoriasis both. So there's a lot of interconnection, and I guess it's only evident because there is so much of bacteria in your gut, right? I mean, there's so much of bacteria in your body. We spoke about the number of genes. We know it's about 2 million a couple of thousand times to a million times more. We also know now that there are more bacterial cells in our body than human cells. So when you factor some of these things, you realize the impact and the role the bacteria play, and the impact that you can have by understanding bacteria better, understanding the bacteria that you have better.
So, Sudhakar asked something like, as a part of this test, do you provide NCBI taxon number of each of the bacteria identified and price of the test, please?
No, I mean, as it is, we have been told it is very difficult to interpret the reports because you have these bacteria names, lactobacillus, bifidobacterium longus, etc. And say, take away some of these bacteria names; it's too complex. It doesn't. I don't understand it. I don't relate to it. This is why we offer a report explanation. So no, we don't put an NCBI taxon number. But if you would like to, we are happy to give you that separately. But we're trying to simplify it. We're trying to simplify it so that people understand and empathize with and act on it better. So for us, more than saying, uh, or rather, as important as saying this bacteria is whatever the solution and how we solve it is important. Um, yeah. So yes, happy to give you different species number. I don't even know whether we have these NCBI taxon numbers, but I'm sure if it's available, happy to give it to you.
So, as for the second part of the question, basically they provide Gut Sense, Gut 360, and IBS Heal as the different kinds of tests that are conducted. And you can see for special rates, we have special rates of gut microbiome tests, which you can definitely go through the scroller and contact on the number to get the discounted rates. So the original rates can be seen on the website, and you can definitely contact on the ticker. So with that we can okay, is it helpful for autism treatment? I think we have already covered that. All right, Seth has been asking what is I just missed it, just a minute. Okay, so what is the relation between food intolerance testing and gut microbiome test?
Um, Now, food intolerance testing is very different. Again, I mean, there are genetic ways to test food intolerance. There are several ways to test which food works for you and which foods don't work for you. But when you look at it from the bacterial point of view, it is we don't test for allergies. We don't say food intolerances could result from allergies or result into allergies. What we test is how the how bacteria consume certain food. Now, for this, an important item to know is that science now tells us that 100% of the fiber that you consume, 100%, not 90, not 99, not 99, 100% of the fiber that you consume is fermented by bacteria. Almost 95% of the polyphenols that are required is produced by different bacteria or synthesized by bacteria, into that way. So when you understand the role the microbiota play in that context, then you understand the role of the different nutrition element that gets generated by the bacteria. So metabolic flux modeling that we can do now tells you that by having, let's go back to the carrot example, that if you have this amount of carrot, we could result in 5 mg of magnesium. Everybody now talking about magnesium, and maybe some other thing of sodium. We can detect that depending on the bacteria in your gut. So we know that if you can, because you have bacteria X, you're consuming carrot, this is the probability that this process will happen. This could result in 5 magnesium being produced. Therefore, you will have this kind of nutrition. So that's what technology allows us to do now, which is very different from. So it allows you to get into that level of detail, which, but at the same time, it doesn't tell you that will I have an intolerance because of something else. So there are pros and cons, and you would use each one in its own way.
So, very interesting question from Pine. What's your take on probiotic ice cream and pizzas?
Well, I like ice cream. It's probiotic or not probiotic. I would say have that. I don't know about the probiotic nature of the.
Probably the name of the ice cream should have the name of the bacteria. This is a lactobacillus ice cream. This is a bifidobacterium ice cream. If you know the name of the strain or the strains.
Right. So, and it's also the see, and again, we should realize that bacteria require certain conditions to survive, to live, and sometimes some of these aspects of heat and well, they say cold is good. But some of these non-ideal storage conditions may result in the bacteria just not being there. So I well have the pizza and the probiotic ice cream certainly. Don't look at it from a probiotic nature of things. I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment on it honestly without looking at. Sorry, I get a lot of questions saying my voice is not audible.
Initially, it wasn't. I think you came closer to the mic and then it was fine. All right. So Kumarison says, are you testing for yeast, fungus as well? How many strains of yeast and fungus are you covering in your tests?
We absolutely. So I think the question will get slightly changed when you understand that in the methodology called whole meta genome testing, you get every kind of microbiota that is there in your gut. In your that's the objective. That's what the methodology is designed for. So it's not about covering one bacteria, one fungus, or one yeast. We get the data for everything that is there in your gut. Then the system then deciphers based on the AT the patterns, ATCG patterns, that this is this fungus, this is this yeast. So the algorithms then work to say that these are all there. But we get the entire data. How we interpret the data is the next step. Sometimes maybe there isn't enough data to interpret it correctly as it is this fungus or yeast. So this is why I was saying this is very different from the culture piece where you actually check against a particular strain of a fungus or a virus or a yeast. That's not what whole metagenome sequencing does. It gives you the data of the entire microbiome, the flora in your gut. Then different algorithms work on to decipher. I'm sure that's also getting better.
So there was a question on, I believe somebody might have tried the test from IOM, and probably the doctor did not
Very
was
brought it
not
up.
convinced with the test report, and there wasn't a satisfactory answer for Tempton. What is your take on this?
I mean, well, the Tenton should definitely talk to our doctor and see how our doctor can help. What we've seen is because it is so new in terms of the way and means and the information and what bacteria does, a lot of the doctors are yet to come to terms with it. A lot of the doctors, purely because when a lot of them went through their academic rigor, the role of bacteria just wasn't there. It's only now. Um, so I would encourage Stanton to talk to our doctor, and if required, have our doctor explain things to your doctor. That may be a good place. 'Cause
That'll be a good place to start. Definitely,
it's
definitely.
not just about the doctor, right? It's about using some of the solutions. Uh, and even if you can explain to the doctor why something is suggested and this whole scientific process that I described. I mean, see, there is a judicious way in which we have taken certain approaches, and once we can explain that judicious process, I think it should help him make a better decision.
Okay, I think I believe I've got a question from Imtiaz. What's the effect of long time enlarged spleen on a weak esophagus? Would you be able to answer this question?
I certainly do not know the answer to that.
Okay, all right. And okay, I've got a
But
question.
at the same time, I mean, in
Yeah.
fact, we just started doing some research on esophageal cancer. Really, I mean, when I say start research, it's very early days. We're working with a specialist hospital on esophageal cancer. So there's definitely a connection. Of course, esophagus is an important piece in the whole digestive process. Early days. I don't have an answer, honestly. Sorry, Imtiaz.
Never mind. Uh, uh, so Nidhi had a question that how are IOM tests different from bug speaks or other gut tests like Biome?
Yeah. So conceptually, they all follow similar approaches in figuring out what the bacteria and how much of bacteria are there in your gut, what bacteria are there and how much of bacteria are there in your gut. The differences are in the nuances of how that information is used. The differences are in the nuances of understanding the role an ecosystem plays. Um, and it'd be unfair for me to come in and say, this is better versus that is better, and I'm good versus this is good. We have certain, we have developed and built certain capabilities. We have developed and built certain IP on why it needs to be looked at, and I'm sure the others have too. We have gone deep in certain areas: sleep, energy, stress, IBS. And globally, I think we are one of the best in understanding the role that the microbiome of different bacteria play in these. In these areas, I can say with significant amount of confidence that how we optimize and how we solve and what we do, because we understand and have gone deep into it, um, yeah, we will do a better job.
So we have gone a little over an hour. I would really love to keep talking about it. This is a very vast topic indeed.
Yes.
Uh, just starting off with the initial things about who all are the star cast of our microbiome, what do they do, how do they play a role, and what are we supposed to be doing if we want to make the maximum use of them. So definitely an interesting topic and something which will keep evolving, and lot many new things will keep coming up, and all thanks to you for taking out your precious time, Bipin, and explaining people and bringing forth such a thing in India as well, wherein we can definitely start looking at preventive measures for our wellness and taking care of our health, and at the same time also helping the people who are experiencing issues with their gut or a gut brain axis. So thank you once again. It has been wonderful speaking to you. What are the last few words, or I would say some kind of things that any guidance that you would like to give to the audience?
But I see a lot of questions that probably could not get answered, and I'm sure people have a lot more questions. And I would say, I mean, reach out to Amarjeet. I think she's probably the best in being, a conduit of sorts. You're welcome to reach out to me too, and I'm sure Amarjeet will enable that. As parting statements, I would continue to reiterate that don't look at it as taking probiotics or sometimes even food items when you're especially when you want to get better. I mean, if you're sick, certainly not. And if you are trying to improve performance for yourself, you need to look at it with you as a distinct, in a unique manner, and that perhaps you don't need to do the tests, so to say, but understand that you're unique and look at yourself distinctly from the others.
So everyone's unique. Too much of a good thing is bad, can be bad as well. Is definitely a message for all of us. Thank you once again, Bipin. It's been a pleasure hosting you. And with that, I would like to bid you adieu. For the people who have been watching us for such long time, we have updates which have been given to you. Please join the WhatsApp community, wherein you would be able to get all the information related to the tests and at the same time for the upcoming talks as well. I'll be more than happy to help you out with reaching out for your questions. You might have a lot many other questions and you were looking for answers for the same. Do reach out, comment below, or send me a message across. There is a number as well. You can reach out to know the special rates on the gut microbiome test. And I really wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you for taking out the time out. And I will be looking forward to welcoming you in another interesting health talk with